Welcome back to the Restoring Darkness podcast. On today's show, it is our great pleasure to be joined by Dr. Nancy Gonlin. Dr. Gonlin is a professor of anthropology at Bellevue College, Washington, who has conducted extensive research into ancient knights. She created the new field of the Archeology of Night, a platform she uses to educate about the impact of light pollution and how knights in the past differed substantially from those today. Nancy earned her PhD in anthropology with a specialization in Mesoamerican archaeology from the Pennsylvania State University. Her LinkedIn handle will be in the show notes, and also some other references and websites. Before we get started, I just want to tell you about the Softlights Foundation. You can go to softlights.org. That's Mark Baker. He does great work. You can even donate to Mark's causes right here on restoringdarkness.com. If you click the donate link, you'll see a link there to go to Softlights and help out Mark Baker. And also, you can donate to the production of this show. You do the same. You just donate on that side if you want to. There's no pressure from us. But know that there are some costs in creating this kind of media, and Scott gets paid. Mark and I don't, but Scott, the producer back there, he gets paid, and there's a bunch of other things that happen, and there's subscriptions and all that kind of stuff. If that's how you want to contribute to the Restoring Darkness and Night Preservation movement, we will happily take it. Cup of coffee, $50, whatever you feel. If you give $2.50, I'll bring up your name on the show if that's what you want. Mark, before we get to Dr. Gonlin, please give us the Softlights update.
All right, I'd be happy to do that. So last week, I filed a new pro se lawsuit. How about that? So this one is similar to a lawsuit that I did last year. It involves the company LVT, which makes a video surveillance system which has blue LED lights. Some of them are static, some of them are strobing, and these things knock me out. So they put them in shopping centers. And so I encountered a new shopping center that had this LVT system installed outside of a Jack-in-the-Box. And I tried to drive by, or I was going in, I don't remember. And these things are debilitating for me. So I tried to figure out how to get it turned off. It turns out it's very difficult to figure out who put that there. It's just this box.
Yeah, it sure is. Yeah, it is.
Oh my God. So who put it there? So I've become pretty good at it, though. So I've contacted the leasing company. I contacted the owners of the shopping center. I contacted Jack-in-the-Box corporate. I contacted the franchisee owner. So there's all these people and corporations, and guess what? They all said, well, it's not my problem. Nothing really I can do. So I went over and over and over, and I sent them emails, and I got email addresses, and I got nowhere. So I kept warning them that I've been through this before, and finally I gave up. So I have filed a new pro se. It's a discrimination lawsuit, and which is that one of the things that they do is that they say their system, these blue lights, are a deterrence to criminals. They deter criminals. Well, what they don't explain is how do they not deter people like me with autism, or people with epilepsy, or people that are, it's discrimination. They're pushing us away. So that's the soft light.
The reason why that it deters criminals is because it has an element of coercion to it. Whether you're sensitive to the strobing blue lights or not physically, there's also an emotional sensation that you have when you're in the presence of strobing lights with equipment in the air. That scares people.
Yes.
So yeah, the criminals stay away, but maybe everybody else a little bit turned off as well. So Mark, you're always up to great work. You're like the truffle hound of the movement. You're digging around everywhere you can to find all sorts of different paths to make a difference here. And my hat's off to you every week that we do this. Dr. Gonlin, welcome to the Restoring Darkness podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. And please, it's Nancy.
Nancy. The anthropology and the archaeology of night. Just give that's not something that can be read in a bio. But give us the elevator pitch on what those terms actually mean in the academic sphere and what lay people can understand.
Archaeology is part of the academic discipline of anthropology, and anthropology includes linguistics, physical or biological anthropology, cultural anthropology, and archaeology. So the anthropology of the night is the broader umbrella. And this means that anthropologists investigate from these four different subfields the night. Whether you're a linguistics, there's the language of the night, whether you're a cultural anthropologist studying contemporary laborers in the night, or a biological anthropologist, the effects of nighttime lighting on people, or me as an archaeologist who studies ancient nights. So, archaeology of the night is part of anthropology of the night. I hope that was a short enough elevator ride.
I think I have a good question to follow up on it that will maybe draw on your expertise and then make people understand. I spent a podcast, so everyone knows. Nancy and I were on another podcast together where I had the honor of listening to her ideas. Maybe this: what is different about our ancestors' experience with night and how they lived, as opposed to how we live now in Western metropolises? What differences were there, and how drastic are they?
There are lots of differences. For one thing, when you would be in, say, 1,000 years ago, or really even 100 years ago in many places, if you decided to go to bed at night, you did not have to worry about the bright lights because there weren't any. So it's not a matter of trying to fall asleep in this brightness that we experience today. If you chose to stay awake, that was your choice, or perhaps it wasn't. Maybe you were a servant and you had to stay awake through the night. But in terms of labor, the amount of oh, just production that goes on at night is absolutely incredible. And it's not good for human beings. So, yes, people worked in the night in the past. That is true. And I can talk about many examples of that. But it wasn't to the degree that we have people working today. So, those are just some of the differences.
And this is drastic, is it not? Like the difference is people, and I think uh, there's something about humans that think there isn't that we're not zoological or something. We're diurnal animals, and
Yes.
yeah, please go on.
So, we are diurnal primates. Most primates are diurnal. There are some nocturnal species, such as the aptly named owl monkey, for example. But as a diurnal species, we need the night for our bodies to function properly during the day. There are lots of things that our body does at night when we're sleeping that are essential. And lots of biological and medical anthropologists have looked at that, as well as psychologists and medical professionals.
And but the difference, it's almost as if this, until very recently, by the general public. I'm not talking about the specialists that study it, but us people that working day to day, going to school, whatever, we don't think that there's any difference that between this and how we evolved as a species, and how drastically the drastic consequences there might be for this in all manner of different areas of human life.
Part of it is most people don't know.
Hmm.
And that's one reason I like your podcast and the Light Pollution News podcast and Dark Sky material, because it brings to the attention that light pollution, or as you said, one of your guests said, dark pollution, is an issue. When I tell my students about this and we have discussions on the topic of light pollution, it's very clear that this is the first time that many people are being exposed to the idea that this exists. And I know some of your other guests have mentioned that as well, that light pollution does exist. It is an issue.
Yeah, it's we've been playing around just because we're doing an education course right now at Nailed for lighting distributors, people that sell
Hmm.
lights, about this topic, and we're trying to cover enough to make it an interesting introduction, but also have some technical value to it. And I think the best overall term is like night pollution, not light pollution, because electric light doesn't pollute during the day. It helps us work in the inside. You know what I mean? In very valuable ways. We
Mhm.
need electric light, and that's not night pollution. But what I think night pollution, that idea of it being invaded by a foreign substance that's light, is a much better thing for people to hear and understand. That your nights are being polluted. It's not your lights that are being polluted. And it's
Yes.
not just light, it's sound and all sorts of things. But yes.
That's true. It's not just light, but sound can obviously disrupt your sleep just as well as light can. And there are all kinds of functions that take place at night that obviously are going to have a lot of noise associated with them. So I like that idea that you are promoting of night pollution, because we are polluting our nights, whether it's the sky above us or uh, our own houses, quite frankly.
And to kind of segue over to maybe what Mark, to turn to the topic that he'll be maybe really interested in. Um, the kind of sensitivity that Mark's reporting. Is it safe to say that he may be one of the first humans to ever suffer in this manner because of the dawning of a LED light and its massive increase over the last period? Are the people that are reporting health impacts from electric light, would they be the first humans to really be reporting that outdoor electric lighting from cars, headlights, and street lights, and billboards, and phones, and TVs, and all this stuff? These are new emerging health conditions that humans have never had before.
I would say yes. How about you, Mark?
I think that's a great question, and I think the answer is yes, for sure. I've heard there's been increased diagnosis of ADHD, uh, but I've heard that, well, but we didn't have that before. The world is moving faster. There are more sounds. There's more electromagnetic radiation in there. And so things have altered. Another example I like is for people with epilepsy. A lot of times we think of people with epilepsy having seizures, but I wonder if they were having seizures when they were simply walking. If they go faster, then flicker starts to occur. If they're on horseback, maybe there's flicker through the trees. If they're going in a car at 60 miles per hour, now things are moving quicker. If the lights that are artificial have flicker in them, they're feeling that. This is increasing the risk of seizure. So I wonder if how many people had epilepsy back in the day.
It's hard to know the answer to that question, especially because there's a stigma associated to many medical conditions, as everyone well knows that. It's hard to know, but on the other hand, the exposure to flashing lights that you spoke about at the beginning of the podcast is certainly an example that well illustrates your point.
Yeah, the Mark. Let me just. I want to frame it back to you because I have a question for you in
Oh,
terms of
okay.
what you just said. So if not that we are Mark or I are saying everything is caused by light pollution. That's not what we're saying. But Mark, is it fair to say that it's very difficult for you to convince an average person that your symptoms are caused by anthropogenic light at night? Is like, do you have a hard time convincing people that to believe you?
Absolutely. Yeah. That is why the government situation is where it's at, because a lot of people don't feel, or they don't make the connection between the artificial light and their life. So technology just rolls on. I happen to be more sensitive perhaps than others. Here in California, the flashing lights on vehicles are actually illegal. But as I've attempted to convince cities to, get rid of those flashing lights because the law already prohibits them, they're ignoring me, or they're pushing back. They don't want to. If they felt what I feel, if they felt like when those people that are in the highway patrol and in the police and the EMS people, if they suffered the kind of same reactions that I do, or that other people that are suffering the migraines or the seizures or whatever, they would immediately say, yeah, these are terrible, let's get rid of them. So there is definitely a wide difference between in humanity, the way we react to these lights.
Hmm. In academia, Nancy, do we see like a convergence? Are people from different disciplines, are they coming together and talking about this as a broader topic? And sort of you have an anthropology, well, anthropology is the department, right? So then there's the
Yes.
archaeologists, there's the psychologists, there's the different types of in the anthro. Do they have conferences where perhaps this is a showcase topic or anything like that?
Absolutely. There is a night sky, or I should say, night studies network, and there is an annual conference that's usually held in Lisbon, Portugal. And Dr. Manuel Ruiz Garcia, who is in Portugal at Lisbon, he has organized this. This will be the sixth year of the conference, and it brings together geographers, urban designers, sociologists, anthropologists, geographers. I think I said that, geographers, artists, anybody who is connected to the night in any way, advocates, for example. So you have this gathering of people, and really anyone can submit an abstract and attend the conference in Lisbon. But on the other hand, there aren't enough of them worldwide. I don't know of any per se in the United States. Um, if there are, I would like to know about them for sure. There are also lots of conferences held throughout Europe, apart from Portugal, that focus on night studies and the effects of overlighting and light pollution. So there are many different ways where a number of people in different disciplines can get together and discuss this and contribute to this conversation, but also to the solutions. It's not just about raising awareness. Okay, what are we going to do with this information now? How do we use this to help people
Hmm. And we want to
and
make
the
sure.
environment as well?
Yeah, and is there an at those amongst your peers, is there an acceptance that light pollution is pollution and something has to be done about it?
Absolutely. There's a range of papers that you'll find at different conferences. For example, mine might be more on the academic side of ancient nights, whereas someone's might be more on the advocate side and more in line with what you and Mark do and advocate for, as well as light pollution news and other podcasts.
What do we have to learn from an archaeological perspective about our ancestors that can really speak to us today, as you know, and maybe in terms of how to guide policy spiritually or something. It's like
Mhm.
here's how our ancestors lived. What would you say to that?
This light pollution is not normal. We did
Hmm.
not evolve with light pollution. Was there light at night in various forms? Well, yes, there were. There were different forms in terms of torches, which are probably some of the earliest forms of lighting, but people generally did not keep such torches lit all throughout the night. And light in the past was expensive, whether you're talking about
Mhm.
gathering firewood or you're talking about gas lamps or um, oil from animals to keep light going. In ancient Greece, for example, you would have olive oil that was burnt to keep gas light, no, excuse me, oil lamps going throughout the night, but most people didn't burn them throughout the night. You would have to spend a substantial portion of your family's income and amount of time and effort to keep lights on at night. So lighting is cheap today. We don't think about it. I have to say, I don't think about it. I just turn on lights and somehow the electricity is generated and we're so disconnected from it. If we had to manually go out and gather all of the firewood or go and kill an animal and get the oil from it or raise plants, gather plants and manufacture the oil or make our own candles, for example, we would be far more aware of how expensive lighting is, but we're not. So that is one point that we can learn from archaeology is we don't spend any amount of our time during the day manufacturing light. We don't. We just turn it on. It's there. I mean,
Yeah.
thank goodness. I
Yeah.
certainly benefit from
Sure.
it, and we all do.
Of course. Of course. It's interesting because I'm always trying to. I don't think it's just fear in the dark. I don't think what's going on with lighting at night is just that we're afraid. And I think what I heard from you is that because light was such a scarce resource in the past, you know, that people really were monitoring and using it carefully. Like you don't want to have to slaughter another cow or whatever, right? Or go chop a tree down. Like take it easy with the firewood there, boy. You know, but lighting at night must have been a major status symbol before electric lighting. Like if people kept the lights on, fires burning at night and all that, that would have been a major status symbol. And I think that's with us to this day, Nancy. That people part of it is safety, but oh, I just want to be safe. No, those the up lights on your trees, they're not preventing anybody from, at 3 in the morning. I'm okay with it, but shut it off at 9:30 or 10 o'clock, right? So there's also this status symbol of light that is in our history or in our past. Like if you had light, you were a big shot with the light all night, and I think that persists to this day.
I think so too, because if your house is all lit up and glowing and basking in this light at night, and you have different colors going on, gee, that looks pretty, doesn't it? And you can afford to do that. In the past, if you had enough lighting, then you could entertain people at night, and that would be huge as opposed to entertaining them during the day. And we know that ancient Maya kings and queens did that. There are so many painted pottery vessels that show scenes of torchlight where the king is entertaining an entourage. So we know that that is part of the equation, as you say, the status of lighting.
Hmm. It's persisted. It's all there's an instinctual. I don't know if that's the right technical term, but there's something inside humans as an animal that looks at the lights and goes, "Wow, that must be important" or
Mm.
something. It goes back a long way. And the other part of it that you mentioned the cost. All of the light trespass mitigations I've done are very much related to the low cost and quick availability of high intensity LED lights on Amazon. Somebody will purchase a 300-watt LED light, which would have been technically not feasible for a home to have. In the past, you'd need like maybe 1,500 watts of metal halide. You needed a whole circuit. You need to change your circuit breaker panel to the bigger size to do this. But now with these LED lights, all these light trespass cases come because the lights are so cheap, Nancy. They're so low cost and so low energy.
Yeah, and dispensable.
Yes, disposable too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so true. We also don't value um, shadows in our culture, meaning Western culture, very generally. I read this book recently. It's called "In Praise of Shadows," and it was written actually in 1933, republished many times over by Junichiro Tanizaki, a Japanese philosopher and novelist. And he is talking about the effects of electric lighting on Japanese culture in terms of the tea ceremony or going to a restaurant and enjoying candlelight, and how everything is lit up, and it affects even the perception of lacquerware, which was brilliant and beautiful under candlelight, but now that it's exposed to this bright
Huh.
light, it doesn't hold those properties anymore. It's not the same. So,
Huh.
In Praise of Shadows is an excellent book for less lighting.
Mm. And it's an old
What
book.
Yes.
Wow. Um, one.
Michael, may I ask?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
go
Go.
ahead.
Yeah. I
Oh,
just.
okay.
I was very excited to have Nancy on the show, and I want to hog her all to myself. But please go
Yeah,
ahead.
I know. I agree. So I've had this question burning in my mind, so I can't think straight because I wanted to ask it. So I want this opportunity. So it's a little bit different question, but I've had this question for a long time. So if in the past night controlled sort of when it was time to go to sleep, and it was expensive now you're telling us to get this light, I would like to know about latitude because this has bothered me as to how this works. So if you live on the equator, and I've been to the equator, the sun sets really quickly and basically at the same time. So 6 o'clock the sun goes down, 6 o'clock the sun comes up, and so you have this consistency. So and I maybe all through the year that it's the same. But if you move north, farther and farther north, you have a wide swing of how much dark you have and then how much light you have in the summertime. Like the summertime, it's light all the time. Maybe you never sleep then during the summer, and then what do you do in the wintertime? So my question is, how do people are like, let's say you said at the beginning of the show that this night shift work, for example, is really bad for our health. People haven't done that in the past. And in my own house, I'd like to know, when it gets dark, no matter what time of year, should I go to bed and sleep until the light comes up?
I'm not going to tell you what to do, Mark,
Okay.
but
That's a,
having a
yes.
consistent having a consistent bedtime is always a good thing, according to the sleep experts. I'm reading another book right now. It's called How to Sleep Like a Caveman, and it's by Dr. Van der Laar. And he talks about having a consistent bedtime and how you should dim the lights as it gets closer to your bedtime. On the other hand, we do have a circadian rhythm that is affected by natural elements, such as the ones you're talking about. For example, the sun is still out in Seattle and it's 9 o'clock at night.
Mhm.
I
Mm.
live in the more northerly latitudes from California, where you are based, and I can't go to sleep at 10 o'clock at night. During the summer, I might go to sleep at 11 or midnight, and then the sun comes up at 5 a.m. I don't want to get up at 5 a.m. Okay. So we might think that we are immune to all of these rhythms that are in nature, but we are not.
Mhm.
But I would suggest you go to bed when you're tired rather than if it's still bright outside and you're not tired, don't go and lie in bed for hours trying to go to sleep. That's not going to
Well,
work.
well, well, let me ask you this then. Is there any knowledge that you've gained in your studies about how ancient peoples went to bed?
Mm.
There are all different kinds of sleeping patterns.
Hmm.
And there's a book that I read called, I can't, I'm not going to get the name correct here, but it's about sleep in different cultures, sleep across the world, and how people have determined, anthropologists have studied people and their sleep habits, which is difficult to do actually because it's an invasion of privacy. It's hard to
Mhm.
study people sleeping. I don't want somebody, watching me sleeping. I wouldn't be able to go to sleep if I knew
Mhm.
somebody were watching me sleeping.
Mhm.
So, and also the anthropologist has to stay up at night. So it's difficult to study people sleeping. But having said all that, there are some people who have done so. And you can find variation in practices, and obviously there are individual variation in practices. So there are people who, in many cultures, go to sleep when it's dark. There are others who have always been night owls, if I can use that term, and have stayed up late. There's cross cultural variation in who sleeps with whom, on what we sleep, how we sleep, when we sleep. But as a general pattern, most humans sleep at night at some point.
Mhm.
It's complicated. It's not just a straightforward answer. I'm sorry, I can't say,
No, but
yes, it's this way.
yeah, but we do see like strange trends in northern cultures that I've just not as a, all northern cultures have steams and saunas. of some kind
Mm.
in the winter. They all do it, not just Finnish people, but it's even the First Nations people in Canada. They have hot rock steaming and stuff like that in their cultural lore and their history that they would do this in the winter. We've also seen evidence of human hibernation in some northern climates, or just long sleeping like bears, where humans will sleep a lot longer in the winter than they do in the summer. Is that coming? Is there anything I just heard about that, and I was wondering if you had heard anything about human hibernation, not like they go into a state and hibernate, but they just do a lot of sleeping over the course of a winter.
I have not heard of that specifically, and I'm going to write that down so that I can look at that. But hibernating, humans physiologically cannot do that like a bear, for example, because we do have to eat and we do have to do other things that our body needs to do. So physiologically, we are not prepared to hibernate for long periods. I don't know. It might be possible. I'm not sure. I don't know the limits of our physiology regarding that question, but that is super interesting. You bring up um, steam baths. They are actually quite common throughout some ancient cultures as well, and that are not in the tropics, or excuse me, that are not in the northern latitudes. They are in the tropics.
Hmm.
Throughout the area of Mesoamerica, which includes parts of Mexico, Belize, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, you have people who built steam baths, whether you're talking about classic Maya people 1,000 years ago, or more recently the Mexica or Aztecs 500 years ago. They called it the Temescal, and it was a purifying ritual to go into a steam bath, but it was dark.
Hmm.
So this darkness also contributed to the spirituality of doing the steam bath. It's not just about going in there to get physically cleansed, but spiritually cleansed as well. And you mentioned many Native Americans have had steam baths. That is certainly true for other parts of the Americas.
There's a
So,
spiritual aspect to this, and
mhm.
I believe in the spiritual world. I'm a Catholic, but I don't. I think that there is something to our spiritual essence which is real, and I wonder if when you go to the steam rooms where the steam room's dark, they call hammam or something like that. It's like a Persian steam room. They have them in Toronto. It is extremely relaxing, actually.
Mhm.
And saunas and stuff like that, and particularly at night before bed. There's something about saunas and fires, sitting around fires, and this kind of stuff that relaxes humans, that brings them into a state brings them into alignment with the night. Is that a fair statement, Nancy?
Yes. External stimuli are removed, and you can focus on whatever it is you want to focus or focus on nothing.
Hmm.
And that in itself is relaxing.
Hmm.
And there are anthropologists who have studied with uh, foragers today, people foraging. There aren't many groups who still forage for a living, that is, hunting and gathering. And one of them who has done so, Polly Wiesner at the University of Utah, studied the Kung Bushmen, as we call them, or the Ju Tuansi, commonly known as the Bushmen. And she found a great difference between nighttime talk and daytime talk. When you're sitting around the fire at night, you tell stories, you talk about the spirit world, you relax, whereas daytime talk is about doing things or getting things done. You don't have time to relax and explore your culture and connect with people. You want to go about your business of the day. And I think that's true for many of us too, where we relax at night, and that's a segue into sleeping well.
Hmm.
Wow, we have missed that. We've lost that connection now. It seems impossible to have that sort of downtime and having the stars to look at, having perhaps a campfire, perhaps the socialization. Our cell phones have come into our lives and occupy our thoughts, and there's no sort of, and it feels to me like our culture is ignoring the fact that we are humans and we've evolved to this point. We've invented technologies that can take us further, but sort of ignoring the fact that the human is still part of the system. The
Mm-hmm.
human, we
Mm-hmm.
can't push the human beyond the limits, and we have to have the that darkness to do the cell repair, to get new ideas into our head, to relax. It's all part of the process. And so, when Nancy, when you do your studies, are you thinking about? I think you are. You've mentioned it, but how the technology now has come in. Are you only studying like what happened in the past, or are you connecting it to what's happening today?
I always connect it to what is happening today. For example, in my archaeology class that I'm teaching this summer, I will have students do a discussion on ancient knights and what is the evidence for it. But then, how does this connect to the future? And how does this
Mm,
connect to the present? I ask them what the connection is so that they can make that leap. I don't want to do that for them. I want them to think about it and what they can do as a modern Homo sapiens living in the 21st century. And some of them come up with really great ideas of things that they can do in their very own house. Like, for example, turning off their cell phone before they go to bed. You might think that that would be something that everybody does, but it's not. And so many of my students say they suffer from insomnia, and I will say, well, what do you think contributes to that? I'm not a counselor or anything. I don't have a background in psychology, but it makes them examine their own practices. So I always connect the past to the present. And you mentioned about the future and where this is going for humans. And if I can mention another book, this is called Dark Futures, and it's by Nick Dunn. It's just published 2025. He is an urban designer out of the University of Manchester, and he talks about lowering the lights. Dark Futures When the Lights Go Down is the title of the book. He's not saying we're going to go back to prehistoric times. Nobody wants to do that. I love my electricity at night to get things done, okay? Nobody debates that, but it's how we use it. And
Mm-hmm.
these are things that both of you are working on.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that I greatly appreciate. And I point my students towards resources. What kinds of lighting should be used at night as opposed to during the day? And why is it that we have all of these street lights that are just contributing to sky glow? Why
Mm-hmm.
aren't they covered over? And some
Mm-hmm.
of them, some of my students will go as far as like, I'm going to write to the senator and say, why aren't we doing this and that? And it's like, exactly. The more people who know about this, the better. And I've been teaching this now for over a decade. So this is thousands of students, and this is my contribution. I feel in terms of education is raising the awareness and perhaps making their worlds a little bit better and making them more aware of their own sleeping habits and how they can improve their own lives.
There's I couldn't agree more that there seems to be some kind of disconnect between the middle ground of sanity sometimes in the world that I see. Like if you say to somebody, hey, those lights are really bright, and like you have your 60% higher than the HD TV level for a college field here.
Mm,
I said this to a guy right to his face, okay, in a light trespass dispute mitigation. I said, your lights are
yes.
60% higher than what we would put on a college field if we were going to broadcast in high definition television, buddy. You need to go down by 90% for the recreational level. And this was, he turned it into, I want to take lights away from children, this kind of thing. And I wonder, how do we bring people to that middle ground? I had Nadine Belbecki on our podcast, and she told us about how important electric light at night is when you're in a war zone. the ability to turn on lights when you're being attacked, or when something like a serious attack from another nation state. And how much humans love electric light at night, but that doesn't justify the craziness going on in safe places where we live with lights on all night, Nancy. How do we bring people from the into this middle ground of sanity where we can discuss these things rationally? That seems to be the biggest challenge.
Right, because you can easily be labeled a radical, and just being labeled a radical, automatically people think the worst of you, that you're trying to take away their electricity. And as I said, I wouldn't suggest going back to oil lamps or candles or whatever. That is not what this is about, okay? Except for that hockey player we talked about in Light Pollution News who
Yes.
wanted to use candles.
Yes.
So we don't want to do that. There has to be an approach that I think one-on-one helps. And I also think that targeting younger generations, I'm a baby boomer, so I try to target younger generations. And I can easily do that because I'm a professor and most of my students are in their 20s. So once you make people aware from an earlier time period in their own lives and what they have missed out as human beings, I will ask my students, how many of you have seen the Milky Way? And they
Mm,
don't even know what I'm talking about, some
yeah.
of them.
They think you're talking
And
about a
I
picture on a
think
computer.
probably,
Yeah.
I mean, that's where they've seen it. It's a real thing, and we're part of that constellation and part of that galaxy. And it's just incredible to me that you wouldn't have awareness of the natural world. I was so excited. A few months ago, there was a planetary alignment, and people could see like 4 or 5 different planets lining up. And that to me is such an awesome experience that we are not providing to people today. And I find this night sky inspiring. And not to have that inspiration and to have that taken away for younger generations, to me, is criminal.
Hmm. It's definitely negligent. I don't. You know what I mean? I feel you. Like it's there's something morally wrong that's happening. That's and we don't have the legal infrastructure to deal with it, because we're so mind-bogglingly wealthy and decadent now that people can't even imagine a time without electric light. We've left that existence to our own detriment in a way, and it's very difficult to explain to people these problems, as Mark said, or this guy thinks he can light up his backyard like a double a college football field, literally. You know what I mean? Like it's like crazy, and but it's difficult. But where do you find hope? Nancy, where do you have your students, obviously with them, but where else do you see progress and movement in this issue?
Well, with podcasts like yours, and also there are more and more publications and more academics getting into resolving this issue. And in terms of the lighting industry, some things that you have brought up in terms of available lighting for people. So, for example, I have switched my outside light that on my porch to soft light
Hmm.
instead of the blue light. So, if we can push those kinds of things, which are easy enough to do. Okay, the light bulb burns out. You need to replace it. What's the best light bulb that you could use for your outside porch? And I don't know if you have resources listed on your website, but that is something I wanted to ask
You
you
know what? There's
about.
a.
If
I'm gonna give a heads out to one of my
yes,
sponsors. Okay, on
do
the Greta
it.
Grip on Lighting podcast. There's a company called Satco, and they make these light bulbs that I put all around my house, and they're beautiful. What they are is like an amber silk wrapped LED. So the LED is like 6 watts or 8 watts, and it has there's different versions of the shape, but it has like a almost like, how do I describe it? It's like they took a thread of amber and wrapped it all around the bulb. And there's no color temperature to this. It's like 1600 Kelvin maybe. And it's so beautiful outside. It's such a nice color of light for outdoors. It's very, very soft, Mark. It's very soft and it's warm, but it also illuminates. It doesn't, like you can see what you're doing if you're walking back to the woodshed, which is what I use. I walk to my woodshed at night to get wood for my fire, right? So I walk back there and I can see well enough to gather up my wood and go back inside. And then those, for me, those go off at 11:30 and everything's dark. But though that bulb, I'll post it in the show notes, a couple of links to that light bulb. And they're not very popular, but they're beautiful light bulbs. Those that's like a silk wrapped. It looks like an incandescent, but it's an LED. And because it's silk wrapped, it removes all sorts of problems that you might have with LEDs, flicker, and you don't see the diode. You just see this beautiful, warm, low Kelvin candle colored light bulb. So yes, there are things out there, and I should be right now. I'm going to go merchandise my website for light bulbs that Michael Colligan thinks are good for outdoors and dark sky. But yes, that's a
Well,
great
please
suggestion,
do,
Nancy. The industry could do
because I
more. The industry could do a lot more.
Well, I'm not going to comment on your industry. You know it better than I do, but I could do a lot more too. And each of us could do a lot more. But if we have the resources available to us, for example, if you post that information, I can put a link in my discussion board to that so students can go to that and see, well, oh, these are available. And do you know if these amber silk wrapped LEDs, which sounds so elegant. Do you know
Doesn't
if
it?
those are available in the US? Because you're
Oh
based
yeah.
in Canada.
No, Satco's the gangsters of lighting are coming out of New York. Satco. You can go to
All right.
satco.com. I'll put the links up on the
Okay.
website for people so that they can
Hmm.
find the on for the show notes. And then I'm also going to, at some point, it might be a month or two, but I'm going to do this. I'm going to put up dark sky light bulbs that Michael's pick, or something, restoring darkness picks. But you know what? Everybody can do more. And one of the things that we can all do from time to time. I don't believe in monthly giving. I don't want you to sign. I know that the app allows you to give me $10 a month or whatever, stuff like that. But look, if you really like this show and you want to donate to Mark's work at Soft Lights Foundation, you go to restoringdarkness.com. You click the Soft Lights donation link. It'll go to his webpage, and you can, buy him a cup of coffee or give him $1,000. You know what, Mark? You know what? With the Lighting in Darkness Foundation, we actually did get some pretty big donations for those light trespass mitigations we were doing. We raised 33,000. It wasn't enough to keep it going full steam, but that was
Wow.
actually a lot of money to raise. A lot of people gave big bucks to that. So props out to you guys. And then if you wanna donate to the Restoring Darkness production costs, Scott Griffin and Scott Wachter both get paid. Don't worry, I don't. Mark doesn't, but Scotty and Scott do. They're professionals. But if you want to help us out with the fees to software and human resources and all that, you can make a donation. And if you give $250 and you want me to give you a shout out, I'll do it on the next show. Other than that, it's been our great pleasure to have on Nancy Gonlin, a professor of anthropology at Bellevue College. All of her stuff will be in the show notes, her social media, and that if you want to check out her reference guide and that. And other than that, thank you for listening, and bye for now.